Hello, beautiful beings. Welcome to Shakti's Gift. I'm your host, Marigol Era, Ayurvedic wellness coach, creative force, and unschooling mother. For the past 4 years, I've been living my daily life according to Ayurvedic principles. Ayurveda, which means the science of life in Sanskrit, is a traditional system of medicine with roots in ancient India. It emphasizes a holistic approach to health by balancing the body, mind, and soul. It utilizes natural remedy, dietary guidelines, and lifestyle practices to promote well being and prevent illness. I just want to be real clear with you guys. I'm not a doctor and I'm not a psychologist, but I am very passionate about this human experience and I'm all about being as sovereign as possible in our health. In this podcast, we will not only talk about Ayurveda, we will also meet a lot of wonderful people who are driven by the Shakti's gift of creativity, transformational force, and feminine power. So you'll be in contact with a lot of amazing beings who are doing the work. They show up, even if it's freaking hard, and they evolve. Because that's what we do. Our human life is ever changing. It is our nature to birth and bury new ideas and projects and to follow the seasons of our lives. So I invite you to grab yourself something to drink, get yourself comfortable, and let's dive deep into Shakti's gift. Welcome, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me on this wonderful day. Today on Shakti's Gift, I talk with Sheryl Catano, aka the Cosmos Mystic. Sheryl and I met last year at a conscious business accelerator, and we did an episode on the first version of this podcast about overcoming the victim mentality. Sheryl is a spiritual beacon of insights. She's a channel of healing and a bridge between the seen and the unseen. She's operating in this world as a psychic medium, a tarot reader, and an astrologer. She's now back to talk about her grandmother's perspective. We talked about motherhood and grandmotherhood, and I feel like it's very important to turn to our grandmothers for their wisdom and their knowledge. And I feel so blessed to count her in my precious circle. A lot of healing is presented when we get together. So if you're in need of guidance, wisdom, or maybe you want to have some insights about your charts, or you want to talk to past loved ones, I really recommend you to contact her. So I listed all of her contacts down below in the description. So yeah, don't hesitate. She's truly amazing. So just before I let you with this amazing interview, I wanted to pick your brain a little. I'm looking to create some kind of an offering, and I have three choices in mind. I really want to create something that you guys will enjoy. So the three choices are either a chakra course to help you balance your masculine and feminine energy. The second choice is an Ayurvedic cleanse protocol to help you get rid of piled up toxins. And the third option that I'm considering is a program to help women reconnect with their moon cycle, so their period. So if you want to help me figure out which one would be more appropriated, like right now, you have two choices. You can either write it down in the comment section. You can write one of these three that I just mentioned, or you can also click on the form that I created, which is in the description down below. So you can just click on that and answer the one question survey. It's quite easy. So thank you so much in advance. I appreciate you. And I'm gonna leave you to this episode with Sheryl, the Cosmos Mystic. Enjoy this episode and we'll talk soon. All right. So today we're with Sheryl Catano, and you are on the first version of the podcast, which was named Let's Create the Revolution at the time.
Yes, ma'am.
And you talked a lot about the victim mentality and how you succeeded in getting rid of it or just like transcending it. And today we are going to go a little deeper into motherhood and how we can, deal with all of that when we're mothering kids. So you're a
Yes.
mother. How many kids do you have?
I have four children. They're grown now, right? My oldest son is going to be 40
Mm.
this month. And then I have 15 grandchildren.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
So, for listeners that weren't there for the first version, you were going through a lot of that victim mentality and it showed up in your body and you were going through a lot. Like, did it start before you were a mother or did it start after?
Um, Looking back now, I think it probably started in my childhood,
Mm,
actually, right? A lot of karmic experiences that my personal parents were going through
mm,
as a child. And of course, I didn't have the knowledge that I have now, even then, or when I was raising my own children.
mm,
And so the way that I see that playing out differently as a grandmother, it is very inspiring to me to be able to grow and have that knowledge and come through, because I think it's really important. The role of mother, the role of grandmother
mm.
is very important in especially when it comes to little people, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, we give birth, to those little beings
Right?
and we guide them. And sometimes it can be hard as we were going through our dark night of the soul or something
Yes.
similar to that, and it can affect our motherhood. So, did
Yes.
how did you see it affecting your motherhood?
Affecting my motherhood, I felt hopeless when I
Mm,
was going through like my you know, the heightened part of the label that they gave me, right? The disability part and things like that, having to rely on my children to help do the roles that I felt were my responsibility
mm,
was really hard for me. And that kind of added a little bit more to the victim mentality, a little bit more to the pain that I was, suffering through on my own,
mm,
but how that kind of bled onto them was something that I think it's real important to talk about, because that emotional bleeding,
mm,
right? And how that can affect them in ways that we don't even understand. It's easy for me to look back now and see some of that as effects on their childhood. You know,
mm-hmm.
memories was a big thing for me as a mother,
Mm,
creating memories.
yeah.
And that's probably something that they obviously remember most, more than the family nights, the game nights, the playing and things that I tried to incorporate before, during, and then even maybe a little bit after,
Mm-hmm.
right? But because it was a big deal. It was
Yeah.
a big deal.
Yeah. So how is it showing up for you, this emotional bleeding?
The emotional bleeding, I try to be extremely mindful and extremely aware of my emotional boundaries, and
Mm-hmm.
what's mine is mine, what's other people is other people, and not bleed onto other people anymore,
Mm.
right? But that comes with learning and growing and emotional maturity as
Well,
well,
yeah.
right? When I was a mom, when I first became a mom, I was barely 17.
Mm.
So I didn't have that emotional maturity
Mm.
to really understand boundaries, and I didn't even know what emotional bleeding was, let alone that I was doing it. You know what I
Well,
mean?
yeah.
And for those things, I mean, I can't beat myself up for it. I have to have compassion and
Yeah.
realize, I did the best I could with what I knew and in the circumstances that I was in. But there's still things like when I see a little bit of it playing out in my own children's lives, as adults, they're adult parents now, right? There's things I can go, okay, yeah, that's a generational thing. My
Mm-mm.
my dad emotionally bled onto me.
Mm-mm.
Um, and my mom didn't have real strong boundaries when I
Mm,
was growing up. So those are things that kind of got passed on.
mm,
I can see it sometimes in other family members that were raised in the same household as me as adults, and learning
mm,
to transmute that and grow from that and create stronger emotional boundaries that allows the child to be able to express themselves in a healthy way, right? Or no matter what emotion that they're having, being able to label the emotion so that they can identify it themselves, and then talk about it
mm-hmm.
in a way that makes sense to them, I think is real important.
Yeah. Did you realize that as a mother or as a grandmother?
More so as a grandmother, I'll be honest, right? More so as a grandmother, but I wanted to, I think,
Mm,
as a mother, be able to talk about things on a deeper level. I just didn't always know how to, right?
mm-mm.
And there were sometimes, I'll be completely honest. There were sometimes I was like, oh my God, I'm dealing with 500 things right now. Whatever it seemed important at the time, I'm sorry, I don't have time to emotionally unpack this with you at this moment. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's hard to navigate. I think being a mother is one of the biggest and best blessings that we have in this lifetime, but it's also one of the hardest jobs
Mm,
that we'll ever
agree. Yeah, I agree with that. It is so transformational and
have.
so painful as well.
Yeah,
It's like it's a challenge. It's an everyday challenge, and you don't like there's no book, even though there are books, there's no real books on like how to freaking raise kids.
right. And they all have their own perspective of their own experiences. So
Yes.
for me, having four children raised by the same parents in the
Mm,
same house
mm-mm.
within a same time frame, all have different perspectives of their childhood experience,
Yeah.
related to me, related to their father, related, you know what I'm saying? And that to me is probably uh, the hardest to navigate. You know what I mean?
Mm,
How can one have the same viewpoint and then another one have something completely different and only remember certain things? You know what I mean? So
yeah.
to take that into an account, the individuality of the child
Mm-mm-mm.
and their emotional needs.
Yeah, we were four as well in my family. As a kid, I was
Okay.
growing up with three other siblings, and it's exactly as you said. Like my perception of the reality we were brought into is so different from everyone of my siblings. We all managed to have different traumas.
Yes. Yes. Now I find that extremely interesting, right? I find that extremely interesting. And I didn't understand it when I was raising my children, right? I didn't understand that as I was raising my children. But from a grandmother perspective
Mm,
and watching my grandchildren grow up in their homes, I can see that on a heightened level, even
mhm,
though I know that about my children because we've talked about it, right? And they all have different experiences, they all have different memories, um,
mm,
things like that. But I can see it playing out in the current present moment with the grandchildren.
mm,
And that I find a very interesting perspective, you know? And I think a lot of it, so it's interesting. Can I talk about astrology just for a minute,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, for sure.
Okay. So if I could go back in time and look at my children from a different perspective and understand their moon sign, I
Mm,
absolutely would. There's some really, really great mentors that do children's charts to
mm,
help navigate, because the little ones, especially the little ones, um, tend to act out more from their moon sign than their sun sign.
yeah.
And I can see it in my grandchildren. The range of grandchildren that I have go from almost 20 to a year old,
Mm,
and then all of them in between. So knowing what I know now and looking at it, I have this one that has a Leo moon, and oh my gosh, she is just like, sparkly and shiny in there, and she likes the attention, and she likes the spotlight to be on her, and you know what I mean. She was born under a super full moon, so she's extremely bright and shiny. And then
wow.
I have another one that's got a Cancer moon. She's a lot quiet. She's an introvert. She likes her downtime. She likes to be alone.
Mm,
um, so it's just very interesting to me to see the differences, and I didn't have that knowledge or awareness
mm,
when I was raising my own children.
yeah.
And I mean, I understand individuality. I understood that then, right? They were all individuals, and I tried to parent them accordingly to what I saw developing
Mm,
within them. Um, but on a deeper level, to understand how their emotions are going to play out. I wish I would have had some of the tools and modalities that are available and being more talked about
mm, mm, mm.
now
Yeah.
than we had, you know, 20 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I feel like motherhood, it's a forgiving journey, because
Yes.
the
Yes.
more we go into, like, my oldest daughter is 12 right now, and the more
Okay.
she's growing up, the more I can see how I could have affected her,
Right.
and as she's growing up, like, she's hitting puberty right now, and we talk a lot together, and the more we talk, it's like she has those memories. And at first, when she started to tell me those memories, I was like so traumatized, because I was remembering that moment, but I wasn't remembering it the way she was remembering it from a traumatized perspective, and I was remembering it from an empowered perspective.
Right.
And so it's very it's a humbling experience to be a mother, and
Yes.
we have to forgive ourselves every day. I feel like for all those transgenerational trauma that we are, I don't know, like, still having inside of us, and we're still acting from them sometimes, and we have to forgive ourselves all the
Yes.
time.
Yes.
Yeah.
That self-compassion, self-care, radical forgiveness,
Mm, mm.
right? Radical self-forgiveness and not holding on to the mistakes that we've made is a big deal,
It
right?
is.
Because that's only going to perpetuate the cycle of, if we hold on to that from a disempowered sense, right?
Yeah. Yes, I
It's
agree.
just going to keep that cycle going. And so that to me is a huge thing. Plus, to me, it helps one cultivate the understanding in them that we are still human
Mm-mm.
and that we're capable of growing, but we're still capable of, I wouldn't necessarily use the term making a mistake, but um that being said, right, maybe not being our best or
Mm-mm.
understanding in the moment exactly their needs, especially when you have different children, right? You've got introspective or introverts, extroverts, ones that are more quiet and receptive to
Mm.
everything that's going on, and then on the opposite scale, then I had a few that were a little bit more demanding
Yeah.
and a little bit more verbal with their demands, their time. You know what I mean? And so it's very hard to navigate all that when you're one person trying to do for so many. But
Yeah.
then at the same time, how well are you at, and I'm sure, right? I've listened to you, I've known you for a little while now. Finding time to make time for self-care and for
Mm,
yourself.
it's
But
crucial.
prior to your really diving into your learning and your growth, how well were you at navigating, maintaining that as a parent?
Like my motherhood experience at the beginning, it was very transformative from start. Like for me, it was it was a spiritual awakening, and it was
Yes.
very beautiful and not painful at all. It was very easy, and I was a single parent, and I intended, like, I knew that if I kept that baby, I was going to be raising her by myself. And
Yeah.
I was good with that. This was my choice. Like, I didn't feel like the father left me, or I didn't feel like I was a victim of that. I was very empowered by that. And it was both of us together. And we were so strong together because we're still very opposite. Like, we look nothing alike. Like, she has curly blonde hair, just for a start, just like physically, like no one can tell that she's my daughter. It's so funny. And mentally, like, I'm a super emotional driven person, and she's like so mental all the time. Like, it's all up here, it's all in the intellect. Like, she's processing everything up here, and I'm processing everything down there. So sometimes it can be challenging, but for, like, since we were just together, and I chose to unschool her so that I didn't have to deal with schedule that weren't mine. And so from the start, the self-care was very present for me. And it's only when I had my second child that I started to hit my limits, because I had two, and then I was with my husband, which had also a daughter.
Yes.
So I just, like, from one to three kids, like, in one summer. It was crazy. And then I lost touch with my
Yeah.
self-care routine, and then my
Yes.
patience was lower. And it was a very hard moment for me to navigate, as I experienced being a freaking amazing mother, like super balanced, having like so much fun with my kids. And as we were so different, like, it was easy for us to have like both of our space. Um, it was quite easy, and I don't want to brag, but it's when I had two other daughters at once, that it just like started to be very, very, very challenging. Um, I wasn't sleeping. I didn't, like, I had trouble connecting with my stepdaughter at the moment. Like, at that time, at the beginning, it was very hard. And being a stepmother is very different from being a mother.
That's
It's
good. Let's talk about that for a minute because I think that's really important, right?
Yeah.
How did you navigate that water?
Yeah, well, being a stepmother, I was lucky because I'm getting along very well with her mother. We're close friends. And so that was like the
That's
easiest
beautiful.
part. But my stepdaughter was having all kinds of challenges. She wasn't eating the food that I was cooking. She didn't like it. She was torn, like her parents were not together. It was confusing for her, I think, like at one point. And we were living very close by, and so it was easy for her to go from one house to another. Like, it was in our head, it was idyllic. We were this
Right.
blended family that were getting along together. But for her, I feel like it was maybe confusing.
Yeah.
And I had this very traumatic birth experience with my second daughter, and I had to deal with that. while I was trying to like bring my stepdaughter with us in our family like full time, you know? And yeah, it was a lot to deal with. And since it's not my daughter, you don't want to overstep your boundaries, you know, because she has a mother and and she was so young too. She was like 4, you know. And
Yeah.
so at 4, like you're still very close with your mother, you know, like you're still very I don't know, like connected, you know.
Yeah.
And so it was very hard to take a place in her life without putting any shadow over her mother's. Like
Hmm.
it was like this dance where, you know, oh my god, it was very challenging. It was very challenging.
Can I ask, how did it affect your self-esteem and your
Oh my
confidence?
god, so much.
Okay.
Everything dropped, you know. I went from I'm an awesome mother. Like I can do anything. You know, I was so powerful as a mother. I was like, yeah, I got this. You know, I was like, and then from that to I suck totally as a mother, and I cannot deal with 3 kids. I don't know how. This is so freaking complicated somehow. You know, they're all different. They're all beautiful. They all want so much time with me. I just
Yes.
I cannot split myself. You know, and I felt like a failure all the time, you know. It was so hard. We were fighting all the time with my husband. You know, it was just painful like throughout, like 100%. And it feels I had so much trouble connecting with my newborn as well because I had all of that to deal with. You know, my oldest daughter was angry at me because I wasn't spending as much time with her as we
Right.
used to.
Right.
So she was like jealous of her stepdaughter. And then I gave birth, and then it was just a mess. And so I was like having to deal with this child that wasn't sleeping, and that dynamic between my daughter and my stepdaughter that was like chaotic all the time. They were like fighting all the time. It was awful. It was just awful. And it's funny now that I look back because now we've reached some balance, you know, in our life. But at that point, like 6 years back, it's like it's one of the hardest thing that I've ever done in my life.
Yes. Can you share some of the modalities that you used personally to help facilitate getting from where you were in a disempowered place to
Mm-hmm.
a more holistic empowerment place
Yeah.
as a mother and as a stepmother?
Yeah. Well, the first thing for me was to be around people because I'm a very social person. And so when I was around other people, it's like I could just like talk about it and just like release some of the tensions. So
Hmm.
that was helping a lot. But um you know, it took me a while to go back to something better for me. And it started with me being keto, actually. I just
Okay.
like, yeah, I
Okay.
like before that, I was like doing yoga, I was doing shadow work, I was doing all the spiritual thing. But when I got pregnant and I like all that moment was so chaotic and I gained weight. And like for me, like if you gain weight, in my perspective is because you're trying to hide yourself, you're trying to pack up something to protect yourself. And
Right.
I just don't feel good when I have this weight on me, you know. And so I was
Hmm.
like, my sister-in-law at that moment was on keto, and she was thriving, she was like so beautiful, and she was like, I have so much energy and it's like so beautiful. And I was like, let's try it, you know? And so I started to eat a keto diet, and it just changed everything. I stopped being foggy. I stopped being emotional, like I couldn't control my emotion before. And then somehow it just grounded me into something, you know? And I felt very good. And then I started to lose the weight that was carrying, you know, with this
Hmm.
pregnancy that was awful throughout. And
Right.
so And so yeah, so I started to lose the weight, and then after that I just got back in touch with my creativity, because for me, my the modality that I love the most is just like sit with canvas, paint, brushes, and to just like throw it out there, you know? So that's my favorite thing. And so we were living in this huge house, so I had like my studio where I had like all my creative stuff. And so my husband was like taking the kids, you know, for a weekend, and I was like spending time with myself, and I was like painting a lot. And so that just like brought me back a little further. And then after that I studied Ayurveda, and so that just like brought me even more like
Kind of pulled
um
it all together a little bit for you.
yes.
I
Yes, it was
love
like
that.
steps, you know? It was like it was
Yes.
just like one step further, one other step, just put one step ahead, you know? And then
Yes.
Ayurveda actually changed my life, and I was doing so much yoga. Like I'm still doing so much yoga, but like at that point it was like the beginning. I used to do like it I used to do it like once a week or something, but then I was like doing like twice a day, you know? I was like very involved, you know? And
Yeah.
then so yeah, so Ayurveda, the course that the program that I was in was a feminine form of Ayurveda. So it just like, I don't know, like my relationship to femininity was like restored, you know. And then after that I had like meditation that came in, and then, you know, Joe Dispenza, and now it's like I'm discovering emotion codes, which is like so good. So it's
Yeah.
like all of that, you know, it's like to always stay curious and to look out for stuff that you can learn, to grow, and to just keep on evolving, you know?
Right. Because what I'm hearing is like it's like building blocks, right?
Yes.
And I see that. So in my youngest daughter, she started that now as well,
Mm,
and it's kind of happening the same way for
mm,
her with I don't know what they call it nowadays. There is still the keto thing, I know that, but there's something a little right where she changed her diet and everything, and it's kind of the same thing. Now she's feeling more empowered. I see positive changes
mm,
in the way that she's parenting, in
mm.
the way that she's caring for herself, in her at work, because
Yeah.
I get to see her at work once in a while when I pop by. She doesn't work too far from my home, and and I can see those changes in her. So when you were talking about that, I really want to take the time to celebrate
Mm,
that you recognize that you had the courage to step out and change something, just
mm.
that one thing, and how it started that butterfly effect, right?
Yeah.
It just kind of led to your thing, because I can see it in, and I've seen it in myself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But to see it in other people is it's very inspiring.
Yeah.
And I think that you sharing that is really, really important, because everybody's mom journey is different and
Mm.
looks different, especially when it comes to um, grandma, right? Like, I love being a grandma. If I could have been a grandma first, dude, I totally would, right? I totally would have. I don't think you could do that though, but you know, um, it's great. It is. It's great. But there's a level of responsibility
Mm.
when they're with me that I feel even higher
Oh,
than when I had
interesting.
my own kids, because they're not mine. If they get
Yeah.
hurt in under my watch or
Right.
something, like, it freaks me out. I'm like, oh my God, now I've got to tell you know what I mean? And I was looking at pictures of one of them from last year, when one of the kids was having another baby, and I had the grandkids, and then I had grandkids living here because I had a daughter living. So there was just a lot of stuff going on, right? And I had to take them all trick or treating. And that's hard when you're not used to the whole level of energy, when you've got,
Yeah.
6 or 7 kids and you're trying to control it, and you don't remember those things, right? And I'm older now. So walking. First of all, the next day, dude, I couldn't get out of bed. I was like, what the heck? You know, I'm gonna be honest. I was like, this is hard. This is a lot harder than I remember, you know. Um, but I seriously, I couldn't. I had to call in sick. I was like, I can't come into work because I can't get out of bed. That was way too much walking for me. But she had fallen and tripped while we were taking her trick or treating, and her
Mm.
face from falling on the street kind of got smashed, or
Oh,
scraped up. Yeah, and she was like 3 at the time, so she's just a little tiny person, and you're
oh.
just, oh my God, now I have to tell her mom. Like I have to tell her mom.
I broke your kid.
Yes. And that stuff creates a little bit of anxiety in me, right? Like, I'm so sorry. I don't know how that happened. But you've got to realize, like things happen,
Yeah.
but you try not to. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So my house still, like, it's weird, dude. I've been a mom since I was 17. I'm 57 now.
Mm.
My house still has kid toys in it, still has baby toys. I still have gates. I have top locks on all the doors, and I'm just like, but I love that. And it's
Mm.
for them because I love having them. I want them to know their grandma. I see grandmahood as kind of like an expanded mom version, in the
Mm.
way where I don't have the day-to-day thing,
Mm-hmm.
but I have learned wisdom, hopefully, right? To be able to share and to see it from a point where, I mean, not all of them will be like, oh, grandma, like my parents, whatever.
Mm.
But from a perspective of, for instance, when my oldest granddaughter went to college for the first time, and I could see and sense that my son was having that separation anxiety,
Mm.
that his oldest child was moving out, becoming an adult. You don't know what they're doing every day. You
Yeah.
don't know if they're making it home every night. And when
Yeah.
this boy moved out, he was 19, of my house. I had a hard time with that. So
Mm.
I think one of the big things about, as far as being a mother and a grandmother, is cultivating um, the sense we talk about letting go in the spiritual community, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I think where we really see it in a way where it actually comes to fruition, the importance of letting go, is when we're raising our children,
Yeah.
because we can't control everything they do. And we have to soften and let them learn lessons. But when my oldest first moved out, dude, I called him every single night to say goodnight. Like, I needed to know he was safe. I needed to know he was home. Are your doors locked? I missed him kissing me goodnight every night.
Yeah.
And after 2 weeks, he finally said to me, Mom, you've got to stop. And my heart was kind of broken. It's like,
Yeah.
I don't know how not to do, you know what I mean? For almost 20 years.
Yeah. Yeah, I get
And
it.
then all of a sudden, it's not. And they're
Yeah.
living on their own. And you don't know if they're okay. And you don't know. That's a hard thing. It was a hard
Yeah.
thing for me anyway.
Yeah, it is.
That was really hard for me. At least I want to know. So he helped me with that, right? By telling me, Mom, you've got to stop. I'm a grown ass man, got my own place. I'm fine. If I'm not fine, you'll know. And I thought, all right, all right. The child becomes the teacher.
Yes.
And that was hard. That was a hard lesson for me, to learn my boundaries and to back off and say, okay,
Yeah.
I need to trust now. And that was a big thing. So, but I could see how he was missing his oldest when she
Mm.
moved out and went to college and moved away and wasn't there every day, right? So it's kind of like, it's interesting to kind
So
of see, yes,
so interesting. It is
right?
so
How
so.
Yes, how those things, and there is a thing, right? There is a thing. My mom used to say to me, birds of a feather flock together. And I used to be so
Mm,
annoyed by that, right? I used to be so annoyed by that. But how I translate that now is like attracts like,
mm,
right? On some level,
yeah.
that's the energy that we're attracting. So I get it. And now I'm like, Mom, you were so wise and you didn't even know it, like, you know, and or other things. Someday, Cheryl, you'll understand,
Mm, mm, mm.
And
Yeah.
I would, that's an interesting thing. I would like to talk to my mom now about her experience of, because I'm the oldest, when
Mm-hmm.
I left, and trusting that your parenting has taken root, that your example has been there, and that they're
Mm.
still developing their own sense of who they are
Yeah.
and what their place is in the world, right? And to be able to watch that and watch the mistakes that they make,
Mm.
and the choices that they make, and know when to put input in and when to hold back.
Yeah.
It's a dance. It's
It
it's a
is.
dance.
Yeah, it is. It is. And you're right. It's so funny to look back and oh my God, to think like I'm of my kids are still at home for sure, but even right now they're telling me like, back off, like,
Really?
oh
Okay,
yeah, yeah.
interesting.
Yeah,
How
yeah.
old Okay, so we know your oldest child is 12.
It's
How old are
12.
the other ones now?
So my stepdaughter is 11, so they're super close together. They're almost like
Okay.
twins. Like if they were in school, they would be in the same classroom.
Okay.
Um, and my youngest daughter is 6.5. And a half
Okay.
is very important at that point.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I
And so
remember that.
I remember last year, I was like, we were very, like, as much as it was very hard for me to connect with her when she was born, um, when we did connect together, it was very strong, and we had like a very strong, snuggly, like always together on, like she was always on me. And we had like this very like fusion type relationship with my second daughter with and my first daughter. We were never like that. We were very like, this is your space, this is my space, and we,
Okay.
you know and
Okay.
and my youngest daughter, I was telling her last year, I was like, like let's appreciate those moments where we're like, cozy together, because there's gonna be this moment that's gonna come pretty soon where
Yeah.
you're not gonna want me to do that with you anymore. And she was like, there's you're wrong. I will always want to be like snuggling. And I was like, right, like when you're 19 and you have like your boyfriend, we're still gonna sleep together in the same bed with your boyfriend? I don't think so, girl. And she was
Right.
like, right, like they don't have like this perspective.
They don't.
And this year, she's like, because we were co-sleeping up until like, I don't know, like 6 or 7 months ago. And then at one point she was like, all right, mommy, go sleep in your bed. And now we're sleeping like right next to each other because she wanted me to be still close. And now, like, since like a month, she's like, I want you to be out of my room. This is my room, and I'm
Yep.
like, and I can already feel that, that feeling of the separation. And it's
Yes.
like we've been sleeping together since she was born, and it's like even just that is so small. But I'm like, is she gonna be okay through the night? But she's always sleeping through the night, but it's
Yeah.
like if I'm so far in the house, and
Yep.
and it's like to imagine that they're not in my house. Like my oldest daughter, she's really into Japan, and she's already envisioning like moving out from
Mhm.
here, Canada, to Japan. And I'm
Yeah.
like, oh my God, like it brings us as parents like for me, it brings me a little level of anxiety to just like
Yeah.
picture my oldest daughter in Japan, like it's so far away. Like I cannot just
Right.
go to you if something happened. You're so freaking far. Like I have to take
Yeah.
like a 24-hour flight to come and see you. It's
Right.
crazy,
Just right. There's a lot of planning involved, and it's
Yeah, like
not a drive around the corner or walk down
exactly.
the hallway.
Yeah, because this has changed too in the youngest generation, and probably you see that with your grandchildren. But we
Yes.
used to, stay kind of close together.
Right.
But as they are, like, they have this window over the world, like with the internet, and they're always, and so my oldest daughter, she's learning Japanese now. She
Hmm.
like she has her plan, like she's going to Japan. Like there's no stopping it, at this point. Like
Right.
I don't know, like I can still cross my finger, but like I have to respect her as well if that's what
Yes.
she wants to experience.
Oh, okay. That's a big thing. Let's talk about that, right? Parenting and respecting the
Mm,
individuality and the choices that they make. How hard, uh, for
yeah.
me, that was a double-edged sword, right?
Yes.
And
Yes,
me and
definitely.
my husband have different culture backgrounds,
Hmm.
right? So the way his idea of our daughters versus our sons
Mm.
was very
Mhm.
different to, and I, in my family, we had all girls. So I'm not a big believer in, oh, it's fine for boys, but not okay for girls.
Mm.
I'm not a big believer in that, right?
Yeah.
And so we sometimes would have little kind of our own dance about, things like that. Um, because I believe that everybody deserves to have their own freedom and express themselves in
Yeah.
certain ways, right? In certain ways. But then in other ways, I was very much still kind of in the box and trying to enforce my conditioning that I was raised in onto them. And so, but let's talk about that because I think younger generations, right?
Mm.
Even from my generation to your generation,
Yeah.
as parents, respects a child very much more than previous generations, my generation and before, right?
Oh
So
yeah.
let's talk about that because I think that's a big deal.
Yeah.
How do
So
how do you show up respecting your children and the differences in them and their needs and desires for cultivating their own sense of identity and
mhm.
individuality?
Yeah, it is so important. Like my father is like, well, he was from a different generation, right? And
Right.
so he was protecting. We were two girls and then two boys, and i
Okay.
was i was the oldest, and so I didn't have a lot of privilege,
Okay.
because
Yes.
it can be scary, to be a
Yes.
parent, and
Yes.
you are going through your conditioning. And so, like, from a very young age, I didn't really like school, and I was speaking up. I don't like it. If I could just be in school and write and read and paint, I would love it, or dance. Like I would love school, but like
Okay.
all the other things I don't like, and it's painful. And they were forcing me to do math because I was so bad at it. And I was like, even at the very young age, I wasn't understanding why would I do something that I don't like. I have to do it
Hmm.
more. Like it just
Hmm.
doesn't make sense. And we were four, so I acknowledge that it is a lot. We have four kids to deal with. Like I know it's a lot. I have three and it's a lot. So four, it's like it's even more. But
Yeah.
to see how it made me struggle not to be heard, and it just, of course, it influenced my way of parenting. And so at first, when I had only one kid, it was very easy to just listen to her and to be there for her needs, and to help her. Like, you want to go into a group of people, and so we're going to find an activity for you to go every week so that you can have friends, and to be there for their needs. And then as I went from one to three, there was like a lot of needs, and then,
Yes.
as I said earlier, it took me a while to balance. But now, So as I said, my oldest daughter, she's like into Japan everything. And my stepdaughter is like very creative, so she's like into drawing, and she's learning the guitar and she sings, and it's a matter of letting the gate opens for them
Mhm.
to express what they want, what they care to do, and to
Mhm.
help them, um give them the the modalities that they need to thrive in their lives. And so my youngest daughter, she's very physical, very like acrobatic, and so we allow them to have a certain amount of money every month. And with that money, they have to fulfill some of their needs according to their interest. So my oldest daughter, she has like a subscription to Japanese anime that she can listen to in Japanese or in English, or, to just be in that culture. She pays
Yes,
that herself. And my stepdaughter, she wanted to learn guitar and sing. So she takes her money to pay for that. And my youngest daughter, she has her money to learn aerial hoops. So that's her like
that's
data
yeah.
right now. So she has like she just like saved some money, and she actually bought one with her money, with her own money. And so she has that in her room, and she's just like playing with that every day. It's like it's right
Yeah.
there. And like a few months earlier, it was yoga hammock, and then like a gymnastic bar, and it's just like, and she pays that with her own money. And so we teach them how to be responsible
Right.
according to their own values, their own interests, and we allow dialogue. It's very wide open in our house. So every time we sit down at the table, for us it's always at the table for some reason, but when we sit down for lunch or dinner, we will just like talk about where are you at, like is it going well, like do you need support into with something. And so yeah, so they learn to work. Like my oldest daughter, she has her YouTube channel, and she's working at it every day, and she's learning how to put effort into something that she loves you
I
know
love that. Yeah.
so that's the way we support that. And sometimes it can be tricky, and it was a mind shift at the beginning, because we were in school, and so we were used to doing the things that we don't really like as
Hmm.
kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so to be able to allow that for our kids and for ourselves as well as parents, like my husband and I were doing what we love to do every day because that's what we teach to our kids. And
Right.
so they they taught us how to do that for ourselves.
I love that. And I love that you just use the term they taught us, because I think in the parent-child relationship, we tend to forget that children are teachers too,
Mm,
right?
definitely.
There's a give and take as far as learning. We learn from them, they learn from us.
Yeah.
And we forget that, and we want to tell them how to do it instead of how does it make you feel to do this my way? Would you like to try something else? And to have that open space
Yeah.
where you can have that dialogue. I think that's really important. And I want to applaud you for that.
Mm.
Because that's a big deal. And that's not something that my generation and the generations prior
Oh no.
cultivated,
No.
right? It was forced, it was tyranny, kind of. You're going
Yes.
to do it my way. And I mean, I think I've probably been guilty of saying it, right? It's my house, it's my way,
Oh
when it
yeah.
comes to certain things, right? You don't sneak boys in the window in the middle of the night, shit like that, right? Like, we're not doing that. But I did have one that tried, right? I had one that tried. I did. That's
Well, yeah,
fair.
I mean, like you have to teach respect for the space where you live. But I
Right.
remember my father told me that once, it's my house, my rules. You don't like it, there's the door. And what
Right.
I did, I took the door. I was gone.
Right.
I was like, fine, this is
Right.
my
It's
opportunity.
fair. That's fair. I'm gonna go do it my way though.
Yeah, exactly, you
You know?
know?
Yeah.
And so I think that cultivating more of a teamwork, like for me,
Yeah.
that's what lacked in my childhood, to be um respected, and like my opinion has some kind of importance in this group in which I'm living every day,
As a part of, right?
yeah, like i'm
It's a
i'm a part
structure.
of
Like you said,
this.
it's
Yeah.
part of a team. And I wish hindsight that I would have cultivated that a little bit, well, a lot more in my children and in the upbringing, right?
Hmm.
It's hard. It's hard to find time, especially when you have as, more than one,
Yeah.
right? More
And you
than
have to
one.
work, and
Yes,
you
when you're
know
doing your own things, and then you have to have family time, but then to take the time to have alone time
oh yeah.
with that child too, it's difficult. I had one that didn't speak up a whole lot,
Mm,
but when she did, then you knew you had to drop everything and pay attention because it could be 2 more months before she would open up again.
mm.
She was very personal, very internal, and and that's hard when you're, trying to work and do groceries and everything else, and soccer and
Yeah.
whatever else is going on, you know and you're like, okay, now she wants to have a conversation right now about something personal that's going on in her world, and I want to listen and I want to have that time. Sometimes you have to be able to say, you know what, honey, I really appreciate that, and I want to give you the time. I just can't at this moment,
Yeah.
but let's, and then you can't always guarantee that she's going to be in the mood
Yeah.
to share her inner world when it's convenient for somebody else. So there's that dance about respecting. I do appreciate the one thing that I did as well is have dinner at the table every night,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, it's like
That was a
it's
big deal.
those, yeah, those little moments where you're sitting together.
Hmm.
And for us, I know that when we eat, it's that moment, and we can spend like 2 hours sitting at the table just
At the
because we're
table,
talking. Yeah. And
right?
we're all done eating, and we're all like talking for like 2 hours, and then it's cultivating those moments where
Yeah,
you get to know your kids and they get to know you, because I mean it's important. I don't feel like I know really much about my parents. I had like
yeah,
to ask them so many questions, and they're like, yeah, whatever, I'm not like answering that, or like,
yeah,
they're not like that interested in sharing what they went through. But I feel like it's teachable, like we can learn
absolutely.
so much. And with all those transgenerational wound, like it's, for me, I feel like it's so important to tell our stories to our kids, and to like not to force that onto them, but to be like open if they have any questions, and to build that relationship. And I feel like you're right, we have to take some times for ourselves, and it may be hard. I know that for myself, like when I wake up in the morning, like don't talk to me for an hour. And I think I was always like
Hmm.
that. I think that
Yeah.
we could ask my father and he would say, yes, don't talk to her in the morning. But it's like, it's fine. I mean, it is what it is. And I just have to nurture that an hour for myself where I do my self-care routine and I'm good for the day, and it's the same
Hmm.
thing at the end of the day. And for the rest of the day, you can come and talk to me because I'm available, because I had those 2 moments to regenerate,
Right. For
and to
your son, right?
respect that. Yeah, it's
Yes.
vital, it's crucial.
Right. One of the things that I talk about in like self-love events, right? Something that I didn't understand as a young mom is when I would travel, when they on an airplane, when they talk about put the mask on yourself first.
Yes,
I never understood that, right? Because if I'm traveling with my kid, trust me, my instinct is going to be to put that on my child first.
I
That's
know.
my natural kind of built-in thing. But if I don't make it, then I can't take care of them. And
Exactly.
that's what it's designed to do. So that's a mind shift, but that was a whole mind shift
Oh yeah.
in everything, right? Because you end up losing so much of yourself when you have the mindset of, I'm going to do for somebody else first before I do for myself
Mm,
in an unselfish way, right?
yeah.
Um,
Yeah. We tend to be
and that's
giving.
hard.
Yeah, we tend to
That's,
give so much,
yeah,
and we have to cultivate sometimes. We have to carve sometimes up like for ourselves. Like
yes,
we have no idea how crucial that is, you know?
yeah, yeah,
It's crucial. It is
yeah.
for everyone.
Especially in the mother realm. I'm not saying the father
It's,
realm's not, it's just as important.
yeah, but like men, they're not well, my husband, I can see it in my husband. I mean, like he's carving out some time for himself. He doesn't even talk about it, you know?
Absolutely.
And if a
Absolutely.
kid goes and talk to him, he's like, ah, nope. And he has no remorse, nothing. He's like
Right.
good with it. And
Right.
for mothers, like what I've listened, mothers talking about, what I've experienced, it's like if they come to me and I'm not available, I feel so guilty somehow,
Me
you
too. There's
know?
like a pain inside, you know? It's like,
Yeah.
and automatically that kind of went to a thing where the self-talk or
Mm,
the self-message from that was, I'm failing them in some way
right.
by not being available when they need me to be available.
Yeah.
And shifting that mindset to understanding that it's a good thing to be able to example for them that there are times people might feel disappointed when we can't drop everything the
Mm,
moment that they think that it needs to, right? And understanding disappointment, understanding um, those things, right? The hard things in life that
yeah.
we're here to teach them too and help navigate, that we're learning on an continuous evolution as
Yes.
they're learning too. As sometimes, right. I used to say that all firstborn children should be sent to an island because they're the test model
Yeah.
for the whole parenting thing, right? Like you don't know anything when you're coming in, and there's so many adjustments, you
Yeah.
know? And it's like, well, and I'm an oldest child, so I would have been sent to that as well, right?
Yeah, same. Same. I mean,
Right?
and you gotta thank you gotta be thankful for your firstborn. I mean, come
Yes,
on. They're going
absolutely.
through so much. I thank
Absolutely.
my daughter like pretty much every day. I'm like, oh my God, thank you so much. I know you're going through a lot. I
Right?
know that sometimes I stink as a mother, and I'm just learning with you. And I'm so sorry that the youngest I've like not a better mother, but I mean, I had
But
experience, you
relax,
know. I'm like more
right?
relaxed. Yeah.
Yes,
There's
absolutely.
less pressure. There's less
Yes.
pressure.
There's less pressure. My first one, when he was starting school, he wanted to comb his own hair. He wanted to do his own thing, right? He's always been very independent. But I was um, very aware of the judgment by other people on how young I was to have a child in the first place.
Yes.
And so, no, you know what I mean? It was a
Yeah.
battle.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
going to comb your hair. And by the time Audrey was starting preschool and stuff like that, she would come in my room in the morning and she'd have on five hats and different shoes and come in and say, ta-da. And it was like, dude, if that's what you want to wear, rock on. That's a battle I'm not going to choose, right? But I had to learn that. And some
Yeah.
of that conditioning um, that I had done to my oldest son based on my perception of
Our
what others
fears.
thought and the
Yeah.
judgments, right? So things
Yeah.
like that. And
I think
that
it's a
that is a
great
learning process.
yeah, I think it's a great idea to even like put that into our kids' awareness. So sometimes
Mhm.
I will say to my youngest kids, you know, like you have this privilege and it's because you have an older daughter, an older sister, you know, and you
Right?
can
Somebody
thank
else took
her.
that for you. They
Yes,
took it for you. Thank your older
exactly.
brother because
Yes.
he had it hard.
Yeah,
You know
it's
what I mean?
like
I was still growing as a person and
yeah.
growing as a parent.
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
It's
I can
definitely,
honestly say that most of my mistakes, the biggest ones, were on the oldest two,
yeah, that's for sure.
you
That's
know?
for sure.
And I do wish I could go back knowing what I know now and reparent, love them. The one thing that I think, right, when you asked me to come back, which I'm so grateful for because I love hanging out with you. And I think we have
Yeah.
such a great time in
Yeah,
our
so much.
conversations and stuff. And I'm so proud of your work
Thank you.
and your relaunch and rebranding and stuff, right? And uh, really cultivating that feminine um, embodiment,
Yeah.
from an empowered place, I think is beautiful and wonderful. I'm very proud of you for that.
Thank
Um,
you.
you're welcome. You're welcome. I just wanted to mention that. Um, but yeah, it's definitely being a parent is something. It's a journey
Yeah,
like no other, like
it
no
is.
other, and to look at it from a position of it's a privilege, right? This being came into my life for a reason, and we're going to learn together, we're going to grow together, and hopefully with as least amount of trauma as possible, right? Right. I mean, none of us, I don't think that, you birth a child and think, well, hold on, little sucker, because you know I've got some really things planned for us. Like we don't necessarily think that, as you know what I mean. It's like, oh, everything, and
Yeah.
right, right. I mean,
Yeah.
I
I
don't
only
think
I
that
only
comes.
have one teacher in my life. She was so powerful. And the minute she had a baby, she started to put money aside, not for their education, but for their therapy.
Yes,
And she was like, I'm so sorry. I know I'm gonna screw up at one point, and I'm
yes,
just saving up for you to be
now,
like to
right?
deal with your trauma that I'm gonna impose on you, you know. So
Because
here's
it
my
happens.
contribution.
It happens. We're not perfect beings,
We're
right? We're
not.
still learning and developing ourselves. And that's the beauty. I can tell you, from a perspective that out of the four kids, I do have one that I have an estranged relationship with. He
Hmm.
doesn't have really anything to do with our family at
Mm.
all.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I Right. I think some of that is the way he chooses to raise his family now.
Hmm.
And as a mother, that is so hard,
Oh
right?
yeah, it
That's
must be.
so hard for me.
Hmm.
But he did teach me as far as that goes. He taught me about free will. He taught me about boundaries
Hmm.
and respecting his choices. It hurts.
Mm-mm.
It hurts more than I can possibly ever even articulate, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I can't stay in that focus and I can't force. That's his choice for whatever reason. This year, before the holidays, we all believe that he changed his phone number so that none of us can get a hold of him.
Hmm.
And that's hard.
Yeah.
That's hard when you have a child who's just decided for whatever reason, and he's married, he's got five boys. And I love those boys. I don't know them very well.
Mm.
And in relation to all my other grandchildren, I wish I would.
Mm.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? They're great beings, and I would love to know more about them on an individual level. So there's no guarantee when we become a parent that that relationship and bond is going to. I mean, the bond is always there, I believe
Yeah.
personally, but we can't control what they do as adults.
Yeah, that's for sure.
You know what I mean? We don't have any of that. So learning to respect his choices, even though I don't agree with them and they hurt me and hurt me for the other kids as well. right? It's
Mm-hmm.
like I was talking to my youngest daughter, they were very close growing up. And so it hurts them, the other siblings, that he's chosen to back away for whatever reason. And it's a lot that he's probably going through emotionally and mentally, but
Right.
he needs to work that out, right? But anyway, um
Hmm.
like she said, right, Mom, it's like mourning a death of somebody that we know hasn't passed.
Yeah.
And that's hard. So parenting comes in all different flavors, mothering comes in different ways. I think this topic is a very important topic to be able to talk about, and to talk
Yeah.
about it from the other perspectives, right?
Yeah.
Is not just mom, but stepmom, estranged mom, grandmother,
Grandmother, yeah.
great grandmother, which we'll probably be adding at some point in the near future, right? With my oldest granddaughter starting her 20s now. So that's not too far off as well. Um, but just what a privilege and blessing it is to be
Mm,
able to hopefully consciously co-create with these, and not just out of autopilot based on our conditioning.
mm,
And I
mm.
think that's really what I would like listeners to get out of your podcast, is that there is hope for the conscious awareness of parenting versus just autopilot parenting based on our own conditioning,
Yes. Yes, I love that. Thank you.
right?
Yeah,
You're
thank you. Thank you so much. And just to end this episode, what would be your advice for a mother that is struggling right now with her dark night of the soul, or that she's going through something? What would be your advice for her as a
oh,
grandmother?
okay. All right. The first things that I would do, very first, right, is stop. I think the serenity prayer has so much wisdom in it,
Mm,
right? That finding something, one thing, uh, to help give the inspiration, whether it's, God, source, creator, whatever. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
mm.
Damn, to me, that has so much wisdom in it, right?
Yeah.
To know that, first of all. And then, second of all, Google, look up some kind of resource, right?
Mm,
We all need that, especially when we're in it and
yeah.
really kind of feeling so disempowered, so alone, and so
Mm,
separated from um, resources, support, things like that. There's groups, right? You can Google it, and have the courage to be able to take the step
mm,
to make one small change. And it's okay to reach out and say, I need help.
mm, mm, mm.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There is wisdom in it takes a village,
It
right?
does.
There's wisdom in that.
Yeah.
And I think that as we all become a little bit more conscious and a little bit more aware, that being a parent and being a mother is hard, is hard, right? It's hard on us. Um, and sometimes we're not always doing that dance the best we can. And that's life, right?
Mm,
Not to beat ourselves up, but not to stay there either,
yeah.
and continue it. I'm a big believer in, can we stop wounding others on purpose,
Mm, yeah.
right? And I think one of the big things that, and I've done it, right? I've done it. I'll admit that I've done it.
Yeah.
Um, right? I'm not admitting that proudly, but just from an awareness that I didn't
Mm,
always, have a conscious awareness of my own behavior
yeah.
and my own patterns. Um, and I think anybody who is at a state in their lives at a younger state and has more conscious awareness of these things, boom, like that's it. You know what I mean? You're so much more ahead of the game, and I honor and respect that.
Mm.
And so that would be my biggest advice, is to find one thing that you can act for your betterment
Yeah.
in, and then find resources in some way, somehow, whether it's a mom support group, or there's some really, really good online astrologers that can help with understanding parenting
Mm.
child different children, especially when you have more than one, right? The differences in them. Some of them, can I say them really quick?
Yeah.
Like Malika Semper uh, astrology, she's really good. And luminary parenting,
Mm.
Tara Vogel, really, really good. I still kind of, right, follow that and follow their posts on Instagram and stuff like that, and have taken some of their courses because I want to contribute in a
Mm.
healthy, respectful way to my grandchildren as
Y-
much as I can. You know
yeah.
what I mean? And to be
Yeah.
able to see the differences and appreciate the differences in them, and help cultivate their own individuality, but understand how they kind of process thoughts, but also process emotions,
Mm.
to try to provide a safe container for them to grow up to feel as empowered as possible, right? Like that's the goal.
That's the
Not
goal.
perfect at it, but that's the goal.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Cheryl. Thank you for your wisdom. Thank you for your grandmother energy today. It was very great to have you again on the show.
Thank
And
you. And it
yeah,
was great to be here with you. You're such a beautiful being. Oh, I am
thank
so
you.
honored to be in your presence. I really
Thank
am. And
you.
I'm so proud of you, honey.
Thank you so
And
much. I'll take
you're
that.
welcome.
Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate that you're here with me. Please be sure to subscribe, rate, review, and share this episode with people you think might benefit from it. If you need support with your lifestyle and well being, feel free to reach out to me. It will be my pleasure to help you with an Ayurvedic consultation. You can go to my website, marigolera.com, to book a session with me. Remember, in the wisdom of Ayurveda, self care is not a luxury, but a sacred responsibility and a journey of nurturing oneself to foster holistic well being. I wish you an amazing rest of your day. Much love to you, and I'll see you in the next episode.